Hi guys, for me the worst type of person is someone who doesn't know much about a subject but has a very strong opinion on it. We've heard from them on issues like climate change, medical science, and of course lately trans rights. So imagine for a moment someone who was not only a member of parliament but a former minister in the government and still doesn't know what a trans man is. Yes, Simon Clarke had it explained to him, and watch as the penny slowly drops.
I think if you look at Bridget Phillips' interview with Times Radio, sorry for mentioning Arrival show, in
We're confident enough.
June last year, quite right, where she was saying that under her preferred interpretation of the law, trans women should use women's bathrooms. That wasn't the position she was adopting during the election campaign. And the reality is, Labour shadow ministers, as they then were repeatedly unable to give a straight answer to the question of both what is a woman and whether trans women should be using women's only spaces. In that sense, I'm afraid, it just doesn't wash to say that there has been consistency, because there hasn't been.
Right, but there has been, and what we have to do now is talk about the protections of trans women and trans men who are often left out of the debate. And actually, I think within this debate, I actually think we shouldn't have debates anymore without a trans man or a trans woman being included in the debate, because it's always talking about them without them. And in regards to bathrooms, which is always this sort of vexed issue, what really concerns me is that, trans women should, in my opinion, of course, still continue to use women's bathrooms. They can't.
That's literally not what the law says.
But hang, let me just
that's
let
the
me
whole
just
point
talk
of this
through.
ruling.
Let me just safe spaces. There's not been a safe space is a safe space. I do not police people in public toilets. And I think that's where we're getting to as society, in policing what a woman looks like. You know, I have a butch lesbian friend who gets hounded out of women's toilets, and it is heartbreaking to the point where we have to escort her into the toilet because she's going to be hounded out, and we need to stop that. And what concerns me about the toilet debate is if trans men then have to use women's toilets, that's going to make women less safe, because how are you going to stop a normal man, going into a woman's toilets and saying, "I'm a trans man"? And so I think we have to look at
I don't follow that logic.
Why?
Because the point is that we're saying that people who are biologically men shouldn't be using women's toilets. That's the point of this ruling, among other things.
But a trans man is biologically a woman.
Someone who's transitioned from being a woman to a man is...
And so they would then have to use women's toilets.
This guy is a former government minister, a former MP, and he's having it explained to him like he's a 5-year-old, the concept of a trans man. See, this is the problem with all of this. The Conservatives, the right wing, Reform UK, all of these have been focusing with an obsession on trans women. And it never came into their minds the concept of a trans man, somebody who has transitioned from a woman to a man. So, in that scenario, as Dawn Butler has pointed out, where do they go? Well, according to the law, they have to go to a woman's bathroom because they are a trans man. So they are biologically, according to the law, a woman. So they have to go there. But if a trans man has a beard, which many of them do, what's to stop somebody like me going into a woman's bathroom and claiming that I'm a trans man? There's the problem that the right wing completely ignore or don't understand. The worst part of this is not that he's some idiot who doesn't understand a simple concept like that. It's that he used to be in a position of power. And there are people like him in positions of power who don't understand these simple concepts and don't understand the consequences of forcing legislation or pushing through directives and stuff like that through the law, through society, that will have impacts. And Dawn Butler brought up a very valid point as well. There are no trans people on this panel, but these people are talking about an issue that doesn't affect them. once again, you have a guy who has no understanding of what he's talking about, but he has a very strong opinion on it. This needs to stop. Part of the problem is the media inviting people like Simon Clarke on. At least ask him, do you know what a trans man is? No, I don't. Okay, we'll bring you on at a different time in the future, maybe on something economic that you might have a better understanding of. There's a massive failure here. A failure of the media and failure of politicians. Politicians, if they have an opinion on something, should have at least a basic grasp of that position or of that issue. But unfortunately, they don't. And they're talking the loudest about these issues. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.